Thank you, Madam Chair, and I welcome the Governor and our colleagues to today's discussion. But I should start this by saying this hearing is a great departure from the strong working relationship that Senator Murkowski and I have set to work together on an energy agenda that will move our country forward. It's too bad that we aren't using our resources this morning to force our House colleagues to reconsider the very important bill that included over 100 different priorities to move our country forward on everything from cybersecurity to energy efficiency. I also don't support the makeup of today's panels. The fact that our two colleagues who do not support opening up the Arctic Wildlife Refuge, who have carried the bill this legislative session and last legislative session, Senators Markey and Senator Bennett, were not allowed to be part of this panel. And I also believe that we should have had more witnesses from Indian country that represent not just the Alaska Native Claims Settlement Act corporations, and yes, corporations are charged with economic development, but individual tribal members, as we have seen throughout Alaska and throughout the United States of America, don't support this kind of development because they believe in the wildlife nature that God has given us and that we are stewards of Mother Earth. So I thank them for that. I thank them for their strong spiritual beliefs. Haishka, thank you. So we're here today because someone has come up with a ludicrous idea that we can pass a tax reform bill that raises the deficit, increases our taxes, and that will take a sliver out of a wildlife refuge to do it. I almost want to call this caribou for millionaires because it is the most ridiculous idea I've ever heard as it relates to meeting the tax reform agenda. So no, I don't like the setup of these three panels. I'm always glad to hear from the Governor, and I'm always glad to hear from our colleagues. But our other colleagues should have had their voices heard, and Indian country should have been better represented. We have no bill before us today. We have no bill, and there's a proposed markup for next Wednesday. When will we see that language? When will we have any idea about this process? So I am disturbed, and I could go in a direction of saying that we don't have to worry because some of the press reports are that from Bloomberg News and others that, quote, the coastal Arctic refuge does not have any promising oil-bearing rock formations, a former BP petroleum analyst said, and there is no great interest in developing the Arctic Wildlife Refuge, and there are safer bets. So one could have the attitude that there are, particularly with the Trump administration's desire, I'm not sure where in the United States of America they don't want to drill, but with their 1.7 billion acres they want on the outer continental shelf and many other places in America, I find it hard to believe that there will be the economic incentive to drill in the Arctic Wildlife Refuge. But why put a big X on top of something that has been so unique to the United States of America? When I recently researched why we got to this point and heard some of the first people that made their case to the Eisenhower administration, quoting from their reports, quote, we all knew that it must be preserved as an original fragment of our past, the last opportunity to protect part of this continent as it once was, end quote. Why? Because, as other people said, quote, it was a spiritual place, an Arctic wildlife refuge. The fact that, quote, they also said it was an area that had been left undisturbed by man, that it was the last laboratory in which plants, animals, and where they live, as they have always lived, is preserved, end quote. So this is why we got to this point, and this is what's unique about it. And this is why, from the Eisenhower administration to today, we have fought to protect it. Now, is Alaska's economy of great concern to us as a nation? Yes. Do we in the Pacific Northwest, I think one of the first things I said to the chairwoman when we started discussion is, let's talk about why the natural gas pipeline in Alaska hasn't been built, because it has a bigger economic impact than this. So there are issues in which we need to be mindful about the energy economy moving forward, but this idea is not new and it's not better. There's nothing that's changed here. There's no new science that says we don't have to worry about this wildlife. And there is no new science that says that the oil development will take up a smaller footprint. This map that we will get to everyone basically shows that the development will take up a significant portion of the refuge. The 800-mile-long Trans-Alaska Pipeline, 219 miles of power transmission lines, and so on and so forth. So the notion that wildlife can exist in this unique environment in the same way with this development is just wrong. I look forward to hearing from Secretary Perry on this, because I've sent him a letter yesterday asking him how they can exist together. So we'll look forward to seeing how he answers that. I also point out that the uniqueness of this area has entered into an international agreement. The caribou population is so unique, so specific, and so special that we've entered into an agreement with Canada on it. That's because they want to protect this population of caribou as well. So the notion that we should move forward on a wrong-headed idea because all of a sudden people want some revenue for a tax bill and move forward today on something that we don't even know what we're moving forward on in language is just not the way I think we should be proceeding. I hope that we will have a chance, our colleagues, to ask our witnesses questions about this, but be assured that even though we don't agree with this process or the process of trying to get 51 votes to change the Arctic Wildlife Refuge, we are never stopping. We are never stopping in trying to protect the Arctic Wildlife Refuge and the uniqueness, and to work with the indigenous people who also support that idea. Thank you.